Hello, 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 and welcome back. This is Online Tech Guy, and I'm going to play a little bit of Super Hexagon. For those of you who don't know, there's not much to it. It only uses 2 keys. Well, 3 keys if you include the spacebar. And I'm going to see just how well I can do. So, let's begin. This is not an easy game, for me anyway.
Line. Game over.
And that's how you play Super Hexagon. You go as long as you can, as far as you can, as fast as you can. As you can see, my best time, 24 seconds. Let's see if we can at least hit that.
Begin. Game over.
I'm not gonna do it that way.
Begin.
Alright, let's go. And go, and go. Oh boy.
Line.
Woohoo, line! Oh, I don't
Game
understand.
over.
Yeah, when it starts to do that, I have a really hard time with this. But, here we go.
Begin.
So yeah, it's very basic geometric patterns.
Line.
You just have to avoid all the lines.
Game over.
And it's a lot harder than it looks.
Begin. Game over. Begin.
We'll just pretend that one didn't happen. Do-over, mulligan, what do they call it?
Game over.
Try again.
Begin. Line. Game over.
I hate it when it does.
Begin.
This game is very difficult and very fun.
Game over. Begin.
I might make that 24 seconds
Game
eventually.
over. Begin. Game over.
Alright, time to readjust myself a little bit.
Begin.
Let's try again.
Line.
Come on.
Game over. Begin.
11 seconds, that's improvement.
Game over.
Or not.
Begin. Game over.
See, the problem is the world spins and it
Again.
spins and my brain spins and nothing works. My brain, my poor brain.
Line.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Game over.
Okay. 13 seconds. New personal record. At least in this playthrough.
Begin.
But that's a very catchy beat. And no, the pieces do not actually move with the beat. At least not that I can tell.
Line. Game over.
12
Begin.
seconds. I think I just barely skated by that time.
Line.
Whoa.
Game over. Begin.
I think this is going to be a series on my channel.
Line.
Eventually I will progress. Or fail. Utterly.
Game over.
18
Begin.
seconds. And here we go.
Line. Game over.
Oh, I should have made this.
Begin. Line.
I'm being quiet, I know.
Game over. Begin.
Why must this game be so hard?
Game over. Begin.
I reject your hardness.
Game over.
That was my fault.
Begin. Line.
There we go.
Game over. Begin. Game over. Begin.
I got lost in the beat. That was my fault.
Game over. Begin.
Come on. We can do it.
Line.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Game over. Begin.
This game will mess with
Game
your brain.
over. Begin.
Once again, the controls are literally nothing but the 2 arrow keys.
Game over. Begin.
System specs are almost nothing.
Game over. Begin.
Alright. Come on.
Game over.
I should have
Begin. Game over. Begin.
Don't judge me. Don't judge me for my poorness. My lack of skill.
Line. Game over.
Yeah. Keep going.
Begin.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know too much about this game, and there's not really a plot or anything. It's just don't die.
Game over. Begin. Game over. Begin. Line.
Whoa, whoa.
Game over. Begin.
When it starts to spin, my head just goes all wibbly wobbly. Brokenness.
Line. Game over.
I went the wrong way.
Begin.
Alright.
Game over. Begin.
Here we go. We got this.
Game over. Begin.
I like that.
Line.
Line.
Game over.
I don't get what I'm supposed to do when it does that. Excuse me.
Begin.
It does have a very catchy soundtrack though.
Line.
Maybe that's just me.
Game over.
Game over.
Begin. Line.
There we go.
Game over.
Sorry, I just got mesmerized again.
Begin.
I do well until it starts to spin rapidly.
Game over. Begin.
Alright, we got this. We got this. We can do it.
Line.
And I say we like you guys are actually playing in any way, shape, or form.
Game over.
16 seconds though. Next level when I hit 30.
Begin. Game over. Begin.
Come on. We can do it.
Game over.
No, we
Begin.
can't. We fail! We're awful at this game! No! See, doesn't that mess with your head?
Line.
Now imagine trying to control this little triangle while watching the entire world
Game
spin.
over. Begin.
I'm not even sure how loud I'm being. Hopefully the neighbors won't get too irritated.
Line.
Line.
Game over.
Went the wrong way.
Begin. Game over.
Oh, too far.
Begin.
Here we go.
Game over. Begin.
Got too distracted by the booms.
Line.
Hey, I hit line. I might want to put a seizure warning on
Game
this.
over. Begin.
Although I don't know, is this the kind of
Game
graphics
over.
for the
Begin.
users? I know it's flashing. Probably. We can do this.
Fine.
We can do it.
Game over.
Or not.
Begin.
Alright. Again. I'm such a glutton for punishment.
Game over.
Just barely missed it.
Begin. Line. Game over.
And this is on the easiest difficulty. Just for fun. Let's do Hexagon.
Begin. Game over.
That was fun.
Begin. Game over. Begin. Game over.
I beat my old record.
Begin. Game over. Begin. Game over.
Why do I
Begin. Game over. Begin. Game over.
Alright, I can't get past 2 seconds. Let's go back to... See, there's even ones that I haven't even finished that are even harder.
Begin.
Back to normal. Doesn't this seem so much calmer? I
Line.
say so.
Game over. Begin. Line. Game over.
I
Begin.
keep getting lost in the visuals. I can't help it. My brain doesn't process shapes in this way.
Game over. Begin.
I need more training! Obi-Wan, I need more training! I can't do this on my own!
Line. Game over.
That's not what Luke said. I don't even know.
Again.
Never mind. Poorly attempted... Blah, 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 blah. See? This is destroying my brain.
Line. Game over.
Oh, I see what I'm supposed to do there.
Begin.
How the heck am I supposed to know that?
Line.
At least I'm getting lines relatively
Game
consistently.
over. Begin. Line.
Busy.
Game over.
16 seconds.
Begin.
I'm almost to 24. I can do it. I think I will play this game until I hit 24 and then go to
Game
something
over.
a little
Begin.
less brain breaking.
Game over. Begin.
Come on, brain, reboot. There we go.
Game over. Begin.
Never mind, this might not. I might cut some of this out before I upload it. You never know.
Line. Game over.
You're evil and I hate you.
Begin.
Alright, we got this. We got this.
Line.
We got this. We got this.
Game over.
We don't got this.
Begin.
Try again.
Game over. Begin. Game over.
Alright. Give me one moment. Alright.
Begin.
Gotta close my eyes for a second, get my brain to work, right? We got this. We got this. We got this.
Line.
You know we got this. I know we got this. Even the game knows we have this.
Game over.
There we go.
Begin. Game over.
Try
Begin.
again.
Line. Game over.
4 seconds away. That's sad. Again.
Begin. Game over. Begin.
This game is addicting.
Line. Game over.
Oh, come on.
Begin.
I can't even say this game's cheating because it's not. I just know I'm not that good at it yet.
Line.
One day, YouTube.
Game over.
One day, Twitch. One day,
Begin.
YouTube. You will see me post a video, or actually beat
Game
this
over.
portion.
Begin.
That is my vowel.
Game over.
That is my vowel.
Begin.
It's like A-E-I-O-U, and I will beat Super Hexagon. Maybe not the entire game. One day, baby.
Line. Game over. Begin. Game over.
Oh, come on.
Begin. Line. Game over.
13
Begin.
seconds isn't bad, though. Not bad, not bad.
Game over. Begin. Game over.
Rejected.
Begin. Game over.
Game, why do you hate me? Just curious, why do you hate me?
Begin.
Stop hating me.
Game over.
I went the wrong way.
Begin.
I regret nothing. Nothing.
Line. Game over.
Except that, I regret that.
Begin.
Alright. Round, 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 go.
Line.
Go.
Game over. Begin.
I'm rowdy.
Game over.
That was wrong. I was robbed.
Begin.
Once again, I can't blame the game though. It's not the game's fault. This is one of those few games where you
Line.
quite literally, very easily
Game
tell
over.
whose fault it is.
Begin.
When you lose, it is yours.
Line. Game over.
Oh, I went the wrong way. I went
Begin.
the wrong way.
Game over.
It's not
Begin.
fair. Why do you do this to me, game?
Game over.
Try again.
Begin. Line. Game over.
Game, I will reach into you and I will grab your little triangle and I will break you into pieces. Or not.
Begin.
Or not. You see that? You see that? That was a good one, huh? I think it was good.
Line.
Busy.
Game over. Begin.
Oh, my poor brain, I'm sorry.
Line.
I know you hate me, brain. Making you think after a work day.
Game over. Begin.
Come on.
Game over.
Not
Begin.
We can do this. We can do this.
Game over.
I just want to beat my high
Again.
score of 30 seconds surviving the game. 30 seconds. I can't even survive 30 seconds in this game.
Game over. Begin.
I can't even make it halfway to 30 seconds.
Game over.
Oh, well, try that again.
Begin. Line.
This is intense.
Game over. Begin.
I'm not making that same joke twice.
Game over.
Grr. So much grr.
Begin. Game over. Begin.
Yeah. Funny thing is, no matter how frustrating it is still fun.
Line. Game over. Begin.
Alright, I don't want to make this too long. I
Line.
can't imagine it's that entertaining watching me fail!
Game over. Begin.
I don't know, maybe you guys like watching me fail. That's possible.
Game over.
Maybe you guys just hate
Begin.
me. Why do you hate me? You guys don't hate me. Why would you hate
Line.
me? You don't even know me.
Game over.
Breathe.
Begin.
Don't breathe, just do it.
Game over. Begin.
We got this. We got this. We got this. We got this.
Line.
See, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this mad
Game over.
failure.
Begin.
Yeah. Yeah, we got this. See? We're
Game over.
not.
Begin. Game over.
I'm not going to get angry.
Begin.
I'm going to be a happy person.
Game over.
I'm going to be cheerful.
Begin.
Cheerful. Happy. And cheerful. You're going to like it.
Game over.
Okay. I'm going to give it 5 more
Begin.
minutes.
Game over. Begin.
Come on.
Game over.
Triangle A.
Begin.
Die.
Line. Game over. Begin.
So much sadness. So much sadness in the game.
Game over. Begin.
I'm not going to go anger. I'm not going to go anger. What does it mean to go
Line.
anger? Sometimes I worry about myself.
Game over. Begin. Line.
We got this. We got this. We got this.
Game
We
over.
almost had this.
Begin.
Breathe. 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 Breathe.
Line. Game over.
13 seconds. 13.15 seconds.
Begin.
Why did I say I was
Game over. Begin.
Why did I...
Game over.
Don't round.
Begin. Game over. Begin. Line. Game over. Begin. Game over. Begin.
I'm seeing red. And I'm not just talking about the game now. I'm going to destroy it.
Line.
I'm going to take the hard drive out of this one.
Game over. Begin.
No, really, I'm fine.
Line.
Fine, don't worry about me. All is well. All is right in the world of Super Hexagon.
Triangle. Game over.
What is this? Whale simulator?
Begin.
Hush, inner voice. The inner voice that says, why are you doing this to yourself? What possible pleasure could you get from this?
Game over. Begin. Game over.
Game over.
Begin.
Game over. Motherfucking game over.
Line. Game over.
So close.
Begin.
We can do this. We can do this. We can do this. We can do this. We can do this.
Fine.
We got this. We got this. We got this. We got this. I don't know what we got, but we got something.
Game over.
We have game over. That's what we have. Alright, 3 more tries. 3 more and no more.
Begin.
I'm going to focus. I'm going to try really hard. I'm going to beat my high score.
Game over.
Or not.
Begin.
And if you thought that was a language, I'm sorry.
Line.
But it is not.
Game over.
I just want the precious.
Begin.
The precious high score. It's bad that I don't even want to beat the game. I just want to beat my high score.
Game over.
As I said, I would do the 3, and now the 3 are done. So look forward to seeing this more often. This is going to be its own dedicated little portion of my world. I will eventually beat my high score, then this level, then the next one, and we'll see how it goes from there. Alright, well, thank you for watching, and I might be switching over to a less seizure-inducing, brain-warping, mind-numbing game than Super Hexagon. But if you enjoyed it, like my channel, subscribe if you want, find me on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, pretty much anywhere you can think of. Alright, and until next time.